Turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn. We got the seas are rising, but the struggle's long. We're gonna turn history, turn it around, and the CEO's got money.
Okay, so there were some people that said they couldn't make it. They wanted to be able to watch what you did and try it out on their own. So
Okay, cool. Well, hi everybody. Let's just do an introduction, name a little bit about your experience with public speaking, whatever you're comfortable with sharing, and then maybe talk a little bit about the best and worst thing that's happened to you this quarantine, what you've been up to, just as a little bit of a warm up and getting to know each other. And then we'll head into some reflections.
The best and worst things today, did you say, Sarah?
In quarantine.
In quarantine, gotcha.
Yeah, just what you've been doing, what's been good, what's been not so good.
Okay.
I can go first. I volunteer. My name is Vanessa. I use she, her pronouns, and experience with public speaking. I would say I have some experience through like various leadership positions. But besides that, like outside of those roles, I don't have other kind of initiatives that I've done on my own in terms of public speaking. And in terms of the best thing, the highlights of quarantine would be spending more time with myself and family members and people who are close to me. The worst thing is just it's a series of unexpected events, unfortunate events, but like there's also like a silver lining in all of them. So yeah, try and appreciate it.
Yeah, and I relate a lot. Definitely lots of ups and downs. David Bruce, would you like to go next?
May I?
go ahead.
I will.
Yeah, go for it.
So I took a few public speaking classes in school, and I was a preschool teacher for about 7 years. And so I got used to talking in front of preschoolers who are human beings, even though they're not adults. And I've had various little opportunities here and there. And then several times a year, I preach at this little church, just like 3 times a year. That's been interesting. I've never gotten to the point where I can stand up in front of people and just talk. So someday maybe. And the worst and best things. The best thing is my wife and I feel kind of guilty about this, but we just enjoy having a simpler weekly schedule, and we're spending a lot more time outside, and we just enjoy that. But I guess the worst thing is I feel for so many things, for businesses going out of business and people getting sick and dying, and all of the rancor, which I hate, the bitterness I hate to see.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Definitely tough.
So for me, experience in public speaking, I guess goes back to my teens and 20s when I started to do more political activism and was up on stage a fair amount for rallies and protest marches and stuff like that back in the day. And now that I'm a lawyer, I speak frequently in court. And so there's that sort of very formalistic public speaking. It's not quite the same as giving speeches, but otherwise I feel fairly comfortable with public speaking. And I remember I spoke at a workshop at Princeton University several decades back, and was having dinner with another person who had been invited, and they were putting us up in the same location at the university. And this person turned out to be a speaking coach who had coached Bobby Kennedy back in the day. And I remember just, striking up conversation with her and trying to figure out what's the main thing that you would advise for people that are learning public speaking. And I remember it to this day. So it was good advice. As far as the best and worst of COVID, the best for me has been that ironic twist of social distancing actually creating more social connection. One example would be two of my very best friends that go back all the way to, preschool and junior high school. We haven't talked with each other for very much for a long time. And now we're doing weekly Zoom sessions because we kind of, we can't talk, but we can Zoom. And well, yeah, we could have done that the whole time. So we're having a great time now connecting and just talking about whatever comes up. The worst, I would have to agree with Dave that there's a lot of just pure sadness that comes with this. I've had a number of close friends and family members who have had COVID. Some have been hospitalized. And then my own daughter, Kaylee, who is quite vulnerable with a chronic disease, is also just had a tortuous time trying to self-isolate and be able to stay safe in housing when she's got multiple risk factors on top of the COVID. Luckily, she survived, but that was really hard.
Thank you all for sharing. Yeah, it's a lot going on right now, but it's great that we can still meet each other on Zoom. And even though I wish we could be in person, but hopefully we'll be back to close to normal soon. Yeah, so I also have a bit of public speaking experience here and there, just like school presentations. My mom is a Toastmaster, so I'm a little bit more interested in like speeches and looking at more memorized content and like performance, that kind of thing. So impromptu speaking I have done a little bit with, but it's not as it's not really my focus. But like, of course, all forms of public speaking are really interesting to me. Even though I wouldn't consider myself to be the most confident or well-spoken person, I think that it's always something that we can all improve on and that I'm constantly working on as well. So yeah, I have a few reflection questions for us to think about. So if you have like a pen or pencil, we'll just like start out kind of slow and like reflective. Feel free to just like speak up or say anything as we go along. But I guess just I'll like give like a few minutes of silence in between each question just so you can think about it, and then we can come back and talk about it. So what do you imagine when you think of public speaking? How do you perceive yourself? Do you consider yourself to be confident or even comfortable? And does audience size matter to you? You just take a few minutes to think about that. I would take it some pens. And then the next question is thinking about introversion and extroversion. There is a difference, I think, between being an introvert and being outgoing and being an extrovert. You probably already know this, but when I always like to remind people that being an introvert doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be shy or quiet, and being an extrovert doesn't always mean you have to be super outgoing. It's just how you recharge and how you get your energy back up. So for me, I consider myself to be an introvert because I recharge in my alone time. That's how I kind of get my energy back up. But I'm not necessarily shy or quiet. I can also be outgoing. So thinking about those qualities, how do you see yourself? And do you see like your introversion or extroversion as more of like a weakness or a strength? And where does that kind of arise in your life or in certain social situations or when you're presenting? Um, and then I'd like you to also think about an experience you've had talking in front of people. Like, how did it feel for you to be in that space at that time? And what did you feel afterwards? Because that's important too. Cool. I have a few more questions, but I was thinking we pause and kind of discuss the ones we went over. Were there any like things that while you were thinking kind of stood out to you um, that you want to share from any? And I can like remind the questions also.
One I just wanted to share was like a newer experience that I had recently. It was like a pre-recorded speech, and I never given a pre-recorded speech. Um, and it was with like two people that I've never met before. So, and it was like a very vulnerable topic, specifically one that I've shared with you both, Sarah and Bruce. I don't think Dave has heard of my story. But it was very nerve-wracking, and I think being an introvert, it was very like I was very anxious giving that speech, and it was just a very different environment because it's like I in the back of my mind I knew like there would be like a bigger audience beyond the two people that was sitting with me at the moment, but then after watching it and watching the speech being played at the live event was definitely a different experience. Like I was definitely more nervous, like actually giving the speech than watching it back. Yeah.
Wow, wait, you were more nervous at giving the speech, but less nervous when you watched it?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really cool. I have the opposite.
Wow, interesting.
I get really nervous like watching myself again. Like I always avoid it, even though it's of course really
Oh,
good to watch yourself talk.
yeah, I think it's because they sent it to me before the event, so I had the chance
Oh,
to get over that moment of like
right.
embarrassment, slight embarrassment. But yeah.
That's really good you did that. I wish I had the courage. I always like kind of like just glance over it or avoid watching it for as long as possible.
I did that for like maybe like an hour to two, but then I was like, I have to face it like sooner or
Oh,
later. Yeah.
that's really good. David Bruce, do you consider yourselves to be more introverts or extroverts? Um, any experiences that you want to share?
I will. Introvert for sure, but I've never thought of it as impacting my public speaking. It impacts my social relations big time. But I don't know, public speaking, I guess it's this narrow focus, limited time thing, and it doesn't seem to bother me.
Mm,
I see myself as sort of an advanced beginner, maybe, and I feel pretty comfortable with it. I get a little bit nervous, although I'll finish by telling you an experience I had. Um, so this was about 15 or 20 years ago, and I had about a 7 or 8 minute talk to give to about 800 or 900 people. And as I was getting ready to go up there and do it, I was just scared spitless. I could just barely move. And ooh. And then when I got up there and started doing it, I calmed right down. I wasn't perfectly calm, but I was like good energy, focused, feeling good. And then afterwards, I felt elated. Um, there you go. Human beings, where we go up, we go down, we go all over the place. All right, Bruce.
wow.
Sarah, you were going to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say that reminded me of this public speaker. I forgot what his name was, but you know those people that kind of get paid to talk to hundreds of thousands of people to promote something. He gets really nervous right before, but he does like I think it was like 100 jumping jacks or 100 push-ups or something like that right before he goes on stage. Just I guess that kind of just shows that like everyone handles it differently, but also like you get really nervous right before and like during speaking you can also be really nervous, but less so, and then afterwards like you go through a bunch of emotions and but it's usually a lot better like after you do it.
I've started doing that
Really?
exercise, real vigorous exercise. Yeah, I found it really helped.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never never tried that, but maybe I should now.
Maybe you don't need to.
Yeah.
So Lila, welcome. We've got just
yeah.
a small crowd for tonight, but what we're doing is an exercise where Sarah asked us to consider several questions, and we're now giving feedback on those questions. Sarah, do you want us to just keep going, or do you want to give Sarah the questions, or how would you like to proceed?
I can give you the questions. That way you can think of it too. While Bruce, maybe you can share a little bit. Okay, so the questions I have were, what do you imagine when you think of public speaking, and how do you perceive yourself in that environment? Um, how confident or comfortable do you feel, and does audience size matter to you? And then thinking about extroversion and introversion, how do you see yourself, and how does that kind of relate to your public speaking? Um, Keeping in mind that being an introvert doesn't necessarily mean that you're shy and quiet, and being an extrovert doesn't necessarily mean that you're outgoing. You could be both or a little bit of each. Um, and then thinking about an experience you've had with public speaking, how did it feel during, before, and after? That was a lot, so that's why we're kind of debriefing right now. And so you can like think about any or all. But yeah, we were gonna hear from Bruce now.
So just very fascinating questions, and for me, very insightful. thinking about it, and also hearing the feedback that we've gotten so far. For me, I would describe myself primarily as an introvert, although as I've gotten older, I have found that I have greater ability to be extroverted when it's needed or when I think it's appropriate. So I'm say introvert with extrovert abilities. And so that does factor in with the public speaking, and the question of how do I feel before or during a public speaking really caused me to think of, well, I get nervous or anxious prior to, and of course you said, does the size matter? And my answer to that is yes. Smaller crowds, not so big a deal. The larger the crowd, the more nervous I would get. And I realized that what I'm afraid of is judgment. I'm afraid that other people are going to think I'm doing a bad job or be critical of me. Even if they don't say it, if I just imagine that they're thinking it, that causes me anxiety. And that I realized is something that's really within my control, or at least it's my perception of that and how much weight I give to that fear, how much weight I give to that risk. Because I don't actually think that anybody's going to do anything terrible. And you think about politicians like Trump or Biden, they're out there speaking all the time, but they're getting slammed regularly all over the place by people who are judging them critically. And yet they continue and they seem to be just fine. So I realized that for me, it's a task of getting comfortable in my own skin and not seeking external validation to prove that I'm okay. That if I can feel good about what I've done and feel like other people are entitled to their opinions, but I self-evaluate in a way that that's important to me, then it's my locus is internal validation or internal judgment as opposed to external validation. And that matches up with what Dave was describing of anxious before the event, giving the speech, feeling better, and then afterwards feeling euphoric. For me is, I see it as sort of a sense of relief that I'm done with the anxious moment. And if I feel like I did okay, then it feels like I was fearful, but I was brave to go ahead and act even though I was fearful. And I feel stronger and better about myself because I've done it. The other thing I think of is that I've seen studies that say fear of public speaking is the number one fear or paranoia that people have, that they're more anxious about public speaking than they are about death or, you know, a whole bunch of other uncomfortable situations. So I think that it's true for a lot of people that public speaking represents a mountain to climb emotionally. So Sarah, I'm just really delighted that you asked the questions of how do we feel, and then thinking about that, it was very helpful for me in getting insight.
I'm glad. Lila, do you have any thoughts? You can take a few minutes to think too. No pressure.
Yeah, I think I can kind of relate to, or like what first came to me is like how you feel before, during, and after. And yeah, I think similar to everyone, I'm like always really nervous before I'm speaking in front of people. And yeah, the smaller the audience, the like less nervous I probably am. And then during, I feel like if it's something where it's just for like a short burst of time, like the thoughts sort of just like go away and you're just like doing what you have to do. If you're following a script or just kind of off the spot, you're like not really thinking about it and you're just brain mouth. And it's sort of like a natural muscle memory thing. And then after, yeah, I feel like really good that I've done it and proud that I was able to follow through with my job. But then I'm also like sort of critical of like, oh, I could have done this better. I could have said something different here. So yeah, that's what first came to me.
That's very relatable. Vanessa, I can't remember. Did you go over what it felt like for you, like before, during, and after, just to like, I guess, remind?
Yeah, I don't think I actually touched on that, but I think I'm like definitely very anxious before. And then during, I think I'm still kind of anxious, but then at some point I feel more confident in my own voice. And I think it also comes with preparation. Like, I think for me, in terms of like speeches and public speaking, when I know kind of bullet points, if I have like bullet points to follow, or if I've memorized my speech, then that's where my confidence comes in. And then like that anxiety lowers. But if I don't feel confident with what I'm about to say to others, then I think that anxiety follows through. But I think like Lila, I'm also critical of myself afterwards, especially if I felt like it didn't go well, but still still proud of myself that I followed through regardless.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always good to be able to get that really good feeling. Oh, hi, Dave. Um, and be able to kind of reframe how we look at our performance, which is something that I think we often underestimate in public speaking. Like you think a lot about preparation, which is really important, and that's kind of what leads you to be less anxious or nervous while you're talking. But then also afterwards, like how you visualize or like think of that can also affect your next speech or your next like public speaking thingamajig. Whichever it is. Um, so yeah, did we? Are you guys like wanting to do some like practice? We could take some time out to write a little mini speech and then kind of come back and do it, and we could give each other feedback in kind of like a really open way, or we could just keep having a discussion. It's really up to you. Like whichever is most helpful. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah, speeches sound fun. I just wonder what they're gonna look like or what they're gonna be about.
Yeah, so I had like a few prompts or two prompts that I was thinking we could do because it's related to the FOR, but we could also do like more fun prompts or whatever it is you want to talk about. So um, one prompt would be looking at a local or global issue you care about. How is it impacting the world, and how do you hope to kind of like change it or better that issue, which is basically it could be your project. Or another prompt is to tell us a story about who you are. What is your story, and how do you feel connected to it, or like how do you kind of like move like within, like I don't know, just like kind of talking about your identity or like whichever aspect of it is that you want to share. And then another prompt, it's more of a fun one, but just like um what how has like quarantine changed your perspective on the world, um and then just like I guess anything else if you wanted to talk about, but yeah, those are just suggestions. What do you guys think? I don't know, there's more creative prompts out there.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking about doing the one like related to your project or the
Yeah.
global issue.
Yeah, I think those are really good prompts. They're all really fun, so I'm having a hard time choosing which one I want to do. But I'll definitely stick with one. I'll choose one.
Cool. Okay. And you can make up your own prompt too. But so I was thinking maybe like take 15 20-ish minutes to kind of just like write outline your points. And before we do that, like do you guys have any questions or like things to keep in mind while you do it? Or like I can also like give a little bit of advice before you go.
Would you mind reading back what the first prompt was? Just
Sure.
a specific word.
Um, what is a local or global issue you care about? How is it impacting the world? And how do you hope to make change on that issue? And then the second one is tell us a story about who you are. What is your story? And what what should we know about you as a person and how you became this way? Kind of along those lines. And then the third one is how has quarantine and the coronavirus pandemic impacted or shifted the way you look at the world? And then a fourth prompt is make your own prompt and answer it. And then maybe aim to have the the speech between like maybe like I think 2 minutes is a good amount of time, because I feel like 5 minutes is pretty short, but in terms of like 15 minutes of preparation, it's a little bit long. You can go over time, under time, but like maybe try to be around 2 minutes, between like 1 and 2 minutes. Um, yeah, and just don't stress too much, but we can give you advice on, oh, and let us know when you come back to look more for like content or performance. And then within performance, like thinking about like maybe facial expressions, like hand gestures, body posture, voice intonation, that kind of thing, like whichever you want to focus on. It could be one, it could be all. But yeah, okay. Any questions?
No questions.
Okay, cool. You have like 15, 20-ish minutes. You can like go ahead and turn your cameras off, um, or whichever. And then I'll see you back at like 6:20, or yeah, 6:20. Oh, first you're muted.
One quick question. I'm showing 6:06, and I think that you were intending to go till 6:30.
Oh, that's right.
If we
So
take
we'll
20
see.
minutes, that we would be at 6:26.
Oh, true. Okay, maybe 6:13 or 6:15. That way we have time for advice and feedback. Or come back when you're done. But if not, we'll cut you off at 6:15, 14. Okay, bye. So you have more time. All right. Just wrapping up our thoughts. It's 6:14 now. Just come back when you're ready, and then we can go over them, and we can take turns giving feedback. Is there any of you guys want to go first, and then we can. I'll help with giving feedback.
I'll go first.
Cool. Thanks, Vanessa.
The question, I'm gonna close my window real quick just because it's kind of loud outside.
No problem.
Okay. The question I decided to answer was the question of who am I, and why it drives the things that I do today. So I'll just start off with, hi everyone, my name is Vanessa, and my Chinese name is Lam Ho Ying. And the duality of the different cultures that I embrace, being Chinese American, is part of the reasons why I do the things that I do today, studying law, societies, and justice, and rooting for the empowerment of underserved and underrepresented communities. Growing up, my father always instilled in me a sense of pride and dignity with my culture being Chinese, Vietnamese, American, ensuring that I know my mother tongue, making sure that I only speak with him in Cantonese, and making sure that I knew the different foods that that come from my culture. So eating and bringing me out to different Chinese restaurants, educating me about how to say it in Chinese. And for that, I really respect and admire my family. And it has made me really proud of my own culture, and hoping that for those communities who feel very just closed off and feel very neglected by the greater society for not having their voices heard, or for feeling like they have to conform to something that they are not. I hope to uplift them and hopefully serve them so that they feel like they have a voice and a place to really just be their genuine selves and embrace whoever they are. Thanks.
I love that.
Thank you.
Before we give advice, is there anything specific that you wanted feedback on? More like content, or more like more speaking?
Sure. I think yeah, content, and then just like the flow of the speech would be great.
Are you guys okay if I say a few words first? Okay, so I like, while you were talking, I was just like, oh my gosh, you are so well spoken. And also, one thing that it really stood out to me was how, like, I don't like okay, so I don't know how to describe this, but I feel like your speaking style is very lyrical. Like it's almost borderline poetic just because I feel like you're so well spoken and that everything really flows. It transitions really well and your word choice is amazing. Sorry, I'm just geeking out here, but yeah, I loved it, all of it. And thank you for being brave and sharing about your culture and your identity. That really spoke to me, and I think that the way you say it is very genuine. Like a lot of times people think of public speaking as something where you have to be like really energetic or like super like in a box, you know, like very structural. But I love just how like you spoke so naturally and so authentically. And it kind of like brought us back to your identity. Like the whole time I could just visualize it. Like when you were talking about going into a restaurant, I could like visualize like you and your father going into the restaurant. And yeah, okay. I don't want to take up too much time. Lila or Bruce, do you have anything to say?
Go ahead, Lila.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought you were super confident, and I could tell that you're comfortable in your words. And I really liked how you had like a good sense of vulnerability, like you weren't afraid to share stuff that was close to you, which really makes an impact on an audience so they can like connect with you better. And yeah, I also liked how you connected back to your upbringing and just how like there are a lot of different pieces that went into like making the speech feel very whole and complete. And yeah, I really liked it.
Vanessa, one of the things that I noticed, well, first off, I would say, after watching many singing contest shows on TV, the judges are always saying it's how you make the audience feel that matters. The technique is part of it, but the goal is how you make the audience feel. And I thought that you really hit it well on that, that you engendered in me a feeling of empathy and identification with you. You brought me into your world and you were very sincere and very real. So I just thought that that was great. One of the things that I noticed that I think is a difficult and somewhat awkward challenge of speaking in a Zoom context or in a webcam context is the placement of your camera and whether you're looking at other people's faces or whether you're looking right at the camera, because what other people are seeing is when you look in the camera, it looks to them like you're looking them in the eye. So that's what I'm doing right now is I'm looking right into the camera, even though my screen is behind the camera with your faces. If I look at your face, it looks like this instead of like that. And so I just, to the extent that you want to look people in the eye on a video presentation, you've got to remember that the camera is the eyeball of your audience.
Right. Thanks for all the advice. I really appreciate like the feedback.
Yes, and just to add real quick, I agree with all of the feedback. And like to be totally honest, like especially for a first run that we just like wrote like a few minutes ago that you just performed, there's not much I would say to improve on. But like I know that like feedback is always helpful. And so one thing that I think you could work on, if you wanted to make it even better, is just that I think extra oomph of confidence. Like if you like looking maybe want to, if that's something you want to explore later on, but maybe try recording yourself talking, and at the points like when you're telling a story, something that you really want the audience to connect to or to imagine, or just something that's very vivid, try slowing down or speeding up, or like just like I don't know, punctuating that. But yeah, that was really well done. Thank you. Lila, are you ready?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if mine is exactly 2 minutes. I think it's probably a little bit less, but that's all right. And I chose the topic of like global issue.
You're frozen. Oh, Lila, are you still with us?
What a terrible spot to have a break in the internet connection.
Oh, you're
We
unfrozen.
lost you there for a second.
Oh, sure. Oh,
Just
sorry.
as you were getting started, the signal dropped.
Oh no. Should I take it back from the beginning? Okay. So, the issue of nuclear weapon disarmament has impacted the world in more ways than I can even explain. It not only has affected relationships between countries, but also has caused mass destruction, killings, and immense suffering. Just looking at the attacks on Hiroshima and Nagasaki is enough to show that these missiles should not at all exist, let alone be in the hands of world leaders or any person whatsoever. And whoever said that cancer caused by radiation, the demolition of whole cities, nuclear winter, etc., was a good thing? I plan to change this by going into schools to talk with kids just like me all about the issues of nuclear weapons and how we can work together to ban possession of them through the Nuclear Weapons Ban Treaty. There is definitely strength in numbers, and we can together rid the world of so much unnecessary misery, one by one step at a time.
Wow, you guys are both so impressive. I'm so impressed. Does anyone want to start this time? I have a lot to say too, but I want to leave space.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, okay, cool. Lila, you blow me away every time. I love how like passionate you are about this issue also, and how well spoken you are. One thing that I think that you could work on is pausing in between each thing. So I noticed you had kind of like an open, like kind of a hook, right? And then you had talk a little bit more about it, and then you asked this question about, I forgot what the question was, but it was the part with cancer. So just like doing a bigger pause there, and then asking it like a question, like as if you're asking them and you want an answer, and then pausing after that as well, and kind of emphasizing that last bit of your speech, because it's kind of like a call to, what's it called, like a call to action, where you got to be like really excited about it. So just kind of kind of like with what what the feedback for Vanessa was to work on like intonation and emphasizing the parts that you want to emphasize, so that each part of your speech is a little bit different. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah, Lila, that was amazing. I liked how you gave examples in the beginning as well. I think that was very helpful for people to be like, oh yes, I've learned this in school. So that makes sense. And the passion really just comes through when you are speaking. So I think that's great. And it was just very short and simple and very concise. I think you ended it really well. So like when you said like one step at a time, and just like, I'm just like, oh, I can do this too. Like, it's not that hard. Or like it probably is difficult, but it's just like I can also take a step as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me. So, because your speech was so simple and short, usually when I think of nuclear weapons, it seems like this very complicated, vast problem to me that I don't even want to learn about. But like when you talked about it, I was like, oh, this could be really simple, and like I just have to take that first step. So, props to you on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Bruce, is there a little speech you'd like to share, or no pressure either way?
I'll pass
Okay.
because we're getting close to 6:30.
Thank you. Yeah. Actually, I think that would be good, because that way we can have a little bit of a wrap up. But I really appreciate you giving feedback and everything. I think this works out well. Um, awesome. Okay. So do you guys have any like final thoughts, questions? Like, how did that feel?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I don't really do too much like impromptu public speeches, so I think that was like great practice personally.
And that's really impressive. Like well, I know like you're a lot older than me too, and you've had a lot of experience, but just like I don't know, like just the way you spoke was so authentic, and I look up to you for that, you know. Like I just think that that was really cool what you did, that especially the lyrical part. That's something that I'm working on too, because I'm really interested in poetry, and you just did it like so naturally. So yeah, I don't know, again, good job.
Thank you, Sarah.
How about you, Lila? How did that feel?
Yeah, it felt pretty good. Definitely like a little bit nerve-wracking, but I was excited to like get it out and get the message out, even just to a few people. But yeah, I think once like receiving feedback and even just like right after I finished, just like kind of measuring myself on how I did, just rehearing it. All I want to do is like run it again, or yeah, like add in what you're talking about and just make it as good as possible.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just love all of your enthusiasm, and just like you're just diving into it, and it was so cool to hear from you. Again, like I've heard like like you've talked about your project before, but like each time it's just so unique and like you improve every time, which is really cool to see.
Thank
Um,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Bruce, do you have any thoughts?
No, just very much a lot of appreciation to you, Sarah, and to Lila and Vanessa for participating. It was wonderful to have actually a small group because we were able to really focus in more with the few of us that were here, and it was great. So, and practice, practice, practice is indeed the golden rule for getting over fear and getting better at doing something. So wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Sarah, for facilitating this as well.
And yeah, just feel free to leave at any time. And if another tip I would give real quick with practicing is usually like practicing in a mirror is good, but I think even better than practicing in a mirror is recording yourself and watching it. So yeah. All right. I hope you
Ready
guys
to close?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn, we gotta turn, turn. We gotta seas are rising, but the struggle is long. We're gonna turn history, turn it around. And the CEO's got money, but our union is strong. We're gonna move history, move it along. We're gonna turn history, turn it around. We're gonna turn history, turn it around. We're gonna turn history and turn it around.